Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Behind the Curtain. Over the course of timeline of industries around the world, we've been exposed to different mediums of layers of media industry production, direction, art, post, etc. The thing that stands above all is content. If you can't get what's right on paper, then I'm afraid you might keep going back to the drawing board till you get it right. The main essence of building a televised product, a digital product, an article, a news broadcast, a show, and a film, everything lays its foundation to the essence of what we call script writing or screenplay. They say content is king. And if you don't build on developing good content, then perhaps, like I said, you have to go back to the drawing board with multiple drafts till you get it right. On that note today, I also have with me a king who's done a tremendous favor to me by agreeing to the small session with a small filmmaker. A veteran screenwriter who has films that include Govind Nihalani's critically acclaimed hit Prokal, which was credited to be India's entry in the 68th Academy Awards. The very powerful, hard-hitting Amir Khan and Rani Mukherjee starrer in super hit Ghulam. Rajkumar Santoshi's magnum opus and biographical legend of Bhagat Singh. And the very essentially correct, politically moving, accurately depicted and very well written and perfectly executed Rajniti, which included the likes of superstars Ranbir Kapoor, Ajay Devgan, Nana Patekar, Katrina Kaif, Arjun Rampal, Manoj Bajpayee, Nasiruddin Shah, and was directed by Prakash Jha. And I can just keep on going with the various blockbusters, but I can proudly say that I haven't missed a single one. Currently, he's working as head of screenwriting at Whistling Woods, also the honorary head of screenplay writing at the Film and Television Institute of India. He's been involved in seminars and conferences on screenwriting and an active member of Indian Screenwriters Association of India. He's also portrayed characters on screen as an actor too in films that include Khajni, Veere the Wedding, and Kama Sutra. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the pleasure and honor of having today none other than Sir Anjum Rajabali.
I apologize if I faltered or misread anything. मुझे बस थोड़ा बड़ा टाइम मिला था आपके साथ काम करने पे. But I thought, introduction is very important. I also want to add into this. I got to meet Sir Anjum at the Pakistan International Film Festival, which was hosted in 2018. I was managing as a producer in hospitality. मैं ये तो नहीं सकता कि perfect था या नहीं था, लेकिन हमने बड़ी कोशिश की कि हम अपने guests का ख्याल रखें, उनको शिकायत का मौका ना दें. And I hope they had a great time. Unfortunately, countries get caught in political turmoil, but then again, it's part of the game. I'm looking forward to a great time. So, sir, I'm sorry for taking that time. How are you, sir?
I am good. Adab to you and to your viewers, Rafay. But before I speak any further, I'm insisting that you take back that king business.
Why? You think that I'm going to take back that king business? Why?
Yeah, because it's hyperbole. I mean, it doesn't fit in. I mean, a king is somebody who rules. I don't rule.
चलें ठीक है. मैं उसको आपके कहने पे लेता हूँ. मेरे लिए आप बिल्कुल भी फिर भी you're a king. We have grown up looking at your content. You're an inspiration. So this is from my side. बाकी देखने वाले की मर्जी है.
In the course of the conversation, I think I am going to touch upon one point which I think is perhaps the only point which is a source of genuine inspiration, but it will come in a certain context. There is nothing else inspiring.
Sir, to start off with, I mean, you've been part of the Indian film industry. You've seen it all. If you would just highlight a little part of your journey, how it began, why did that itch of writing come? Where did it come from? Or for the viewers.
This is the most uninspiring story that you will hear about.
Best.
I had no intention, Rafay, of becoming an author, writer, or anything creative at all. I am the son of a farmer. My primary interest since college was psychology, and I was absolutely determined that I should become a practicing professional psychotherapist in the field of psychoanalysis, which is the Freudian approach to the mind. So after working on the farm, in 1982, I came to Bombay with the sole purpose of training to become a psychoanalyst. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. I mean, I trained, and somewhere a couple of years down the line, there was a realization that it wasn't really, I wasn't suitable for that. I was very disheartened, but later on realized it was a wise decision on their part. Then I had nothing on my hands. I had a job, I was competent, I was began to earn okay, slowly. But एक खालीपन जो होता है अंदर, वो खालीपन चल रहा था, बिकॉज जो कर रहे हैं वो अच्छे से कर रहे हैं, लेकिन मन उसके बाद नहीं रहता है। एक बार सेटअप वगैरह कर दिया, वो डेटाबेस इंफॉर्मेशन रिसर्च हेड ऑफ बिजनेस इंडिया, okay. So
Wow. Okay.
that has nothing to do with it has nothing to do with what I wanted to do in Bombay in any case. I just happened to have discovered that job and I developed a certain competence, and so that was known. तो कोई ऐसा मतलब दूर दूर तक कोई ख्याल भी नहीं था तो भैया राइटिंग करेंगे और फिल्मों में घुसे। चक्कर ये हुआ कि दोस्ती हो गई एक बहुत ही उम्दा शख्स से, दैट इज मिस्टर बाबा आजमी। बाबा आजमी जो उनकी बहन शबाना आजमी है,
राइट राइट।
तो उनसे मुलाकात हो गई। हमारे पास एक कुत्ती थी, उसके जरिए कि उनको भी पसंद थे कुत्ते, हमें कुत्ते को पसंद थे, तो वी स्टार्टेड शेयरिंग दैट डॉग एंड बाबा वाज वेरी हेल्पफुल। व्हेनेवर वी वेंट टू वर्क वी वुड डिपॉजिट द डॉग विद हिम एंड so that it wouldn't be lonely. So it became like thick family friends. And even till date, I mean, we are very, very close. He wanted to make a film.
अच्छा,
okay. वो तो cinematographer थे, उनको फिल्म बनानी थी, तो उन्होंने इंसिस्ट करना शुरू किया। And I said it is absurd. I mean, आप क्या बात कर रहे हो? मुझे कोई लिखना आता नहीं, कभी लिखा नहीं, मैंने कभी स्क्रिप्ट नहीं देखी है। हम तो नहीं, आप इतनी कुछ बातें करते हो। फिर वो तो हर हिंदुस्तानी करता है। एवरीबॉडी इज एन एक्सपर्ट ऑन सिनेमा। अरे ये ऐसा नहीं किया, ऐसा करना चाहिए था। एवरीबॉडी इज एन एक्सपर्ट ऑन क्रिकेट, Tendulkar should not have played this way, should have played that way. That doesn't mean that we know how to play.
Absolutely.
But he insisted, and when Baba Sahab insists, he can really get out.
Of course.
तो वो 6-8 महीने तक मेरे पीछे लगे हुए थे और सिर्फ उनको चुप कराने के लिए, फ्रैंकली ट्रूथफुली आई एम टेलिंग यू, एक दिन बैठ के 1992 फरवरी की बात है, कुत्तों को घुमा के लाया, नीचे बैठा सोसाइटी के गार्डन में, और मैंने कहा फिर कल बाबा साहब से मुलाकात होगी, फिर शुरू हो जाएगा उनका ये राग। तो लेट मी सी, क्या मैं कोशिश करके उनको एटलीस्ट ये दिखाऊं कि भैया देख ये है और ये स्क्रिप्ट नहीं है तो मुझे नहीं आता।
सही।
So I started writing, and Rafay, perhaps that was the revelation moment. Not because I discovered any skill or talent,
right?
The joy of conceptualizing. I started thinking, and मेरे पास कोई तरीका था नहीं उन दिनों में, ना इंटरनेट था, ना तो ईमेल का तो सवाल ही नहीं है, किताबें नहीं थी। स्क्रीन प्ले शब्द मैंने तभी सुना था जब बाबा ने जिक्र किया था। मैंने कहा स्क्रीन प्ले क्या होता है? तो मेरा स्क्रीन प्ले ये बोलते हैं। मैंने स्क्रिप्ट सुनी थी, डायलॉग सुना, मतलब इतना मैं परे था उससे। लेकिन जब बैठ के मैंने कहा क्या कैसे लिखूं, आता तो है नहीं, कुछ सीखा विखा तो है नहीं, तो ख्याल आया कि जैसे पर्दे पे मानो मैं देखना चाहूं, मानो फिल्म बन चुकी है, तो मेरे मन में जो है वो फिल्म एक चल रही है, तो वो फिल्म मैं पर्दे पे देख के कागज पे उतार सकता। तो आई वर्कड इन ऑपोजिट, रिवर्स डायरेक्शन, दैट आई स्टार्टेड राइटिंग व्हाट आई वाज सीइंग, एंड what I didn't realize at that time was that was a fantastic, I mean, there was a golden rule of writing, that you actually, you know, that if the text can come, the word can come from the image, and then you put it in text and then it goes back into the वो लिखा कुछ 14-15-18 पेज का कुछ, A Day in the Life of, पूरी स्क्रिप्ट नहीं, एक ही सीक्वेंस। बाबा को बुलाया, बाबा आए, पन्नी आई और उन्होंने सुना, और वो उनका रिएक्शन जो था, that did the trick, because they were very very pleased with it. It so happened, जैसे बाबा साहब की मुझे तो फिल्म दिख रही है, तो ऐसे बाबा मैंने देख के ही लिखा है, तो ऑब्वियसली दिखनी चाहिए आपको फिल्म, क्योंकि फिल्म तो मेरे मन में बन चुकी है। Right. So he said, whatever it is, that whichever approach you have taken, it seems to be rather appealing. और उन्होंने सीरियसली कहा कि मैं फिल्म बना पाऊँ ना बना पाऊँ, लेकिन आप ये छोड़िएगा, ये कुछ बात है। वहाँ से राफे एक हॉबी के रूप में शुरू हुआ। जॉब तो था मेरा, और प्लस आप जानते हो EMI इंस्टॉलमेंट्स होते हैं, घर के कर्ज चुकाना होता है, घर का खर्चा होता है, थोड़ा सा पैसा भेजना भी पड़ता था, और इतना ज़्यादा नहीं कमा रहा था। So as a result of which I continued with my job and I started this as a hobby, which became a serious one. अब दूसरी बात देखो राफ, ये आती है जो बहुत सारे लोगों को नसीब नहीं होता है, एंड दैट इज एक्चुअली नसीब किस्मत.
Absolutely.
I have been an extraordinarily lucky person when it comes to my career in filmmaking, because I kept meeting interesting people, people who I vibed with. They offered me work. I never had to look for work. तो वो जो बम्बई में बोलते स्ट्रगल, तो स्ट्रगल जो है प्रोफेशनल स्ट्रगल नहीं करना पड़ा, क्रिएटिव
जी,
स्ट्रगल जबरदस्त करनी पड़ी, क्योंकि इतना टैलेंटेड मैं हूँ नहीं, और ऐसा कोई
सही.
गिफ्टेड नेचुरल राइटर मैं कभी था नहीं. लेकिन लोग
अच्छा,
होते हैं, लेकिन
सही.
लोग जिस अंदाज से बात करते हैं, जिस अंदाज से वो खत भी लिखते होंगे वगैरह, तो उसके अंदर एक चमक आती होगी, और ऐसा
बिल्कुल.
कुछ था नहीं. So I had to really overhaul something inside to be able to discover some creative impulses, intuition, etc. तो वो स्ट्रगल जबरदस्त रही, औरों से ज्यादा, एवरेज राइटर से ज्यादा रही. प्रोफेशनली आई वाज वेरी लकी. तो गोविंद
ओके.
निहालानी से इत्तेफाकन मुलाकात हुई,
जी.
इत्तेफाकन.
वाह.
और एक दोस्त थे रफीक बगदादी, जो फिल्म क्रिटिक वगैरह थे, और बहुत ही करीब के दोस्त और अजीज दोस्त थे. वो गोविंद को जानते थे क्योंकि वो फिल्म के बारे में लिखते थे, फिल्मों के बारे में. तो इत्तेफाकन मुलाकात हो गई किसी एक रेस्टोरेंट में समोवर में. गोविंद से बातें होने लगी. गोविंद अपनी एक स्क्रिप्ट में अटके हुए थे, तो जो मेरे साथ जो बातें हो रही थी, वी स्टार्टेड डिस्कसिंग सिमिलर टॉपिक, सिमिलर अप्रोचेस. तो ही सेड व्हाई डोंट यू कम होम. तो मैं
ओके.
गया और पढ़ाई, और मेरा जो फीडबैक था उनको अच्छा लगा. उन्होंने कहा कि तुम क्यों नहीं करते इसको. मैंने कहा बड़ा रिस्क ले रहे हो, आप खतरा मोल रहे हो, कुछ मुझे
सही.
आता नहीं है लिखना. उन्होंने कहा उसकी चिंता मत, जिस अंदाज से आप बात कर रहे हो आप लिखो. और
सही.
वहां से आई री रोट दैट स्क्रिप्ट, सो दैट बिकेम द्रोह काल.
ओके.
बाबा साहब के जरिए थोड़ी सी तारीफ दूसरों ने सुनी होगी, तो फिर आमिर खान ने बुला लिया एक बार, वो गुलाम के लिए वे लोग
राइट.
अटके हुए थे.
राइट.
वाह, उसके बाद फिर न जाने, मतलब दरवाजे खुलते गए. क्योंकि चक्कर ये है राफे, समझना जरूरी है, एंड माय जर्नी इज समवेयर आल्सो connected to the way in which, to the history of screenwriting in that phase. I'll tell you
ओके.
why. Because the reason why I suddenly became in demand without anyone having read a word of what I had written, without anyone having seen a film of mine. The first film Dhokal came out in 95, और ये मैं बात कर रहा हूँ बयान की, क्योंकि एक फेज ऐसा आया हुआ था जो लंबा चल रहा था कि वी डिडंट हैव इनफ राइटर्स, इनफैक्ट वेरी वेरी फ्यू राइटर्स. एंड महेश भट्ट हैड टोल्ड मी दैट द प्रॉब्लम विद राइटर्स टुडे इज दैट दे डोंट राइट. They ideate, they talk, some assistant is making some notes, and then those notes are passed on to the director. At the most what they do is they work out something like a step outline, which is like 10-12 page ka, you know, just synopsis में scene by scene by scene. Develop नहीं किया हुआ, जो उसके dialogue जो लिखे जाते थे वो set पे बैठ के लिखते थे. तो director के पास जो material आता था, generally he was the one revising it. तो एक सिस्टमैटिक शायद लिखने की परंपरा इतनी रही नहीं थी उस दौर में.
ओके.
और कुछ लोग थे जो कर रहे होंगे, लेकिन given the number of films which are being made, very few scripts are actually being written. तो जब ये बात फैली कि ये आदमी लिखता है, because I would actually write it out, believe you me, that itself became like a very desirable quality. अरे वो actually लिखता है. And then of course I could discuss them, because I was 34 years old at that time, तो एक maturity थोड़ी बहुत थी. So as a result of it, this combination seemed very attractive, perhaps.
ओके.
And I got this series of offers, Subhash Ghai, and then even Mr. Yash Chopra called me and said that if you have anything, then we can do something together. And I said, yeah, thank you, etc. Sunny Deol. I mean, suddenly there was this word being spread, which is completely irrational. It had, really speaking, Rafay, no real basis in the professional or creative competence of me.
राइट.
It was based on the dearth of writing in the film industry, and therefore ये कुछ ऐसा दिखा. और प्लस वो कल्चर भी ऐसा था कि ऐसा नहीं, किसी ने ये नहीं कहा कि बिफोर ऑफरिंग ये फिल्म कि आपने क्या लिखा है, कुछ तो लिखा होगा, स्पेक पे लिखा होगा, खुद ही लिखा होगा, वही भेज दीजिए, वही दिखा दीजिए. तो मतलब काम देख के आदमी ये परखता है कि हाँ भैया इसको हम ले सकते हैं. गोविंद के अलावा, गोविंद ने मांगा, उसने कहा कुछ लिखा है आपने, मैंने कहा कि हाँ बाबा के लिए मैंने थोड़ा बहुत लिखा था. उसने कहा भेजो जरा मुझे.
ठीक है
तो उसने वो देखा और फिर उसने कहा कि ओके लेट अस कंफर्म दिस. Nobody asked you. But that was the way in which the film industry functioned. It is no surprise that the quality of writing really was sputtering, stuttering, stumbling, all along. I mean, and that has been one of my major anguishes and major grievances, that we have not paid enough attention and given enough importance to scripts. Script should be central to cinema, because cinema is a storytelling medium. It conveys a storytelling experience. Who is constructing? The word that you used was content. I'm saying
Yes.
essentially it's writing, it's scripts.
Yes.
That we're talking about story, screenplay, dialogue. I mean that. So not enough attention was paid at that time. The way in which I received offers should itself tell you how little importance was given to that. मतलब literally like कि अगर अच्छी अच्छी बातें कर लेता है तो लिख दो. और किसी को मैंने पूछा भी था, ऐसे बॉस एक तकलीफ ये है कि आई एम स्टिल on my own practicing and wanting to learn. So when I reach a stage where I feel good, I feel confident, then I will decide to take on those kind of projects. He laughed. And this is, I'm talking about an extremely senior person in the film industry. He laughed. He said, लिखने में क्या कोई भी लिख देता है. कोई भी लिख देता है. This was the flippant, casual, dismissive way in which writing was treated. You see, and is it any wonder that the quality of cinema that we have seen, very few of those. I mean, you admire Indian cinema, and there are a lot of admirable things about it. Absolutely, I'm not denying that. Likewise with yours. But the thing is that if you really see how many of those are sort of meaningfully connecting with and engaging the audience, where the audience goes out feeling somewhere emotionally satisfied at having watched an interesting story which has moved them, you'll discover there's not more than about 10-15% on the outside. Even if you go by commerce,
Yeah.
15% of our films manage to break even based on theatrical revenues. They have to sort of, they have to buttress that with various other spin-offs that they look out for.
Right.
अभी that ये वेब और ये तो सब अभी इतने जोरों से शुरू हुआ. पहले तो थिएटर ही हुआ करते थे. थोड़ा बहुत टेलीविजन पे आ जाता था, तो बाकी तो थिएटर ही था. थिएटर से मतलब कहाँ नुकसान ही नुकसान हो रहा है. And why? The primary reason is revealed by my story that you asked.
Yes.
भैया इस तरीके से अगर देखा जा रहा है writing. So anyway, so that was my journey. That it was a series of rather fortunate coincidences and things.
It's an amazing journey, because you see everyone someone has to start, and लिखने से बहुत फर्क पड़ता है. And it's great because one thing I want to ask you is that is it very important to go to film school to learn writing? I mean, if you have talent, तो आप so करो, या considering listening to your story, is it important or not in today's time?
देखो, दरअसल देखा जाए तो 3 किस्म के लोग होते हैं जो लिखना चाहते हैं. एक तो वो होते हैं जिनके अंदर एक इंट्यूटिव टैलेंट जो है, शायद वो पहले से होता है बिकॉज of the way in which उन्होंने जो साहित्य पढ़ा है. Maybe they're exposed to drama, maybe at an earlier age they began writing, thinking, the way they narrate, they're good raconteurs, they spot the sort of foibles around them and construct some interesting account of those. So those are those who already have that talent. They generally neither look for any training or otherwise. They've been doing it on their own, and a lot of those people are like that. And Salim Javed never went to any school. They were not even authors.
Right.
But they had that spark. Then there's the second type who realizes, like me, okay, that is, I want to do this, but I would be more confident if I learned the craft, because screenwriting वो बला है राफे जिसके अंदर आर्ट और क्राफ्ट का लगभग बराबर कमाल है. So you need, I mean, if you have great ideas, if you're thinking of wonderful characters, if you've identified a certain setting, wonderful is there, you have an outline of a story, great. That I would say is the art part. Now it has to be crafted. scene by scene, the structure has to come out, there is a certain design which emerges, which is appropriate to the story. तो ये काम आना जरूरी है और ये यहाँ हम लोग काफी सारे लोग फिसल जाते हैं. So it's important to learn that there is a particular form in which your story is going to be expressed. You need to become familiar with the form. तो ये वो है जो खुद मेहनत करके सीखते हैं. मैंने वही किया. सेवरल तरीके अपनाए और उसको लेके बात आगे बढ़ाई. फिर तीसरे वो होते हैं कि वो फील कि भैया इसके साथ साथ एक डिसिप्लिन की भी जरूरत है जो मुझ में है नहीं. So which is why a film school becomes very useful. बिकॉज वहाँ मार तोड़ के एक सिस्टम के हिसाब से, एक टाइम टेबल के हिसाब से आपको काम करना पड़ता है. यू कांट से कि भैया आज कोई इंस्पिरेशन नहीं, आज मन नहीं हो रहा है, नहीं यार कुछ कंफ्यूज हूँ, नहीं बहुत बुलशिट. सिट डाउन एंड रेडी राइट. तो एक वो डिसिप्लिन होती है और वो एक फॉर्मल तरीके से जो सिखाते हैं, विच इज एक्सट्रीमली यूजफुल. आई मीन आई शुड नो दैट बिकॉज आई हैव बीन डूइंग दिस
राइट
3 years और सो. तो ये वो हो गया. तीनों ही बिल्कुल वैलिड है, बिल्कुल जायज है. कहने वाली मेरी बात है कि unless you have some genius talent, the important thing, Rafay, is, and even for them I would say, the important thing is to treat it seriously as a specialized form of expression, as a specialized craft. And therefore it becomes necessary to learn that, to understand what there is. There are many ways, non-formally, in which a person can learn. But one has to learn it. This isn't like merely writing poetry or even painting. I mean, those are things perhaps which don't pay that much attention to the form. Here, this is an industrial process. आपके हाथ से जब आपकी स्क्रिप्ट छूट के जाएगी, there are 200, 300 people going to work on that. There's going to be a huge investment. There's going to be technology, equipment. There's a certain process by which that script is going to be realized as a film and put on the screen. And therefore you have to write in such a way that you're aware of what your script is going to go through, because your script has to dovetail into that. It's like a relay race. Yeah, I'm running the second last lap. Now, I know that I have to pass it on to the director. There has to be an overlap when the baton is being passed on. I can't start running outside the track because he's waiting there to receive it in a particular way. So therefore, you have to recognize that your script is a work in progress as far as the filmmaking process is concerned. आपका काम खत्म हो जाता है, but then it is picked up, okay, and therefore it is then realized on the screen. So you have to have all the elements and all the approach in such a way that it is possible for that to be real. So therefore, that part has to be learned. तो ये हम लोग जोर देते रहते हैं हमेशा कि चाहे आप खुद सीखो, चाहे आप फिल्म स्कूल जाओ, उसके में कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता है, लेकिन सीखो.
बेहतरीन. नहीं, थैंक यू फॉर दैट अमेजिंग रिस्पांस. आई डू फील मैं फिल्म स्कूल नहीं गया था, मैंने भी हाथ पैर मारे और खुद ही लिखा और खुद ही आगे बढ़ा अप टू द इंडिविजुअल. सर अभी looking at the content which is in Indian cinema, I mean, how are you seeing the evolution of content right now? From, I mean, I was born in 1982. उससे पहले तो मैंने कुछ फिल्में नहीं देखी होंगी, लेकिन to now, like, how are you seeing Indian cinema evolve? Is it worth it? I mean, is it going on the right track? Because you are a very socially relevant writer. You write about hardcore subjects, you know, with things which make impact. And then you have commercial cinema. तो किस तरह से हम कहाँ जा रहे हैं सर, तुम लोग? Some thoughts from your end.
देखो, राफी, इसके लिए एक थोड़ा अगर एक कदम पीछे अपन जाएं, थोड़ा बेसिक्स की तरफ नजर डालें. देखो, द ब्यूटी ऑफ स्टोरी टेलिंग इज दैट एज a medium, it has all the possibilities of being a very vibrantly engaging form. Correct?
Right.
Now, uske andar, the possibility of the diversity of content is huge. It is not necessary कि अगर कोई कहानी आपको मैं सुनाऊं जो आपको लुभाए, जिससे आपको सुन के एक you're gripped by that. It doesn't mean that therefore it should only be a certain kind of story that will grip you. The entire spectrum of genres are capable of telling of using stories in such a way that they will nonetheless be able to touch you. I mean, अगर एक सेकंड के लिए अगर अपन झांक के देखें और आपको मैं पूछूं कि which are the great films, yeah, which are the great plays, you will tell me Shakespeare was the great writer. Okay. Tell me about Shakespeare, which are the great plays. Immediately, first you will discuss Hamlet. Then you will talk about Macbeth. You will talk about King Lear. You will talk about Romeo and Juliet. Now, all these are tragedies. All of
Absolutely.
these leave you very disturbed.
Right.
But if you look at
Right.
Hamlet and even Ambivalence, and if you look at Sophocles' Oedipus Rex, I mean, it ends in a massive tragedy. Horrible, horrible, unimaginable tragedy. Yet it is a very fine play. If I ask you about love stories, which are the great love stories in the history of literature? You will tell me. Laila Majnun, Romeo Juliet, Siri Farhad, Soni Mahiwal, Heer Ranjha. All of them are tragedies.
Right.
You see? All of them actually talk about the disturbance in society which don't allow two lovers to unite. So we are referring to a backdrop which is preventing them of coming together, whether it's a family fight or whether it's a tribal fight or a gang fight. The important thing is that those families, tribes, gangs belong to a society where in fact violence and the inability to resolve differences is actually so dominant that lovers are kept apart. I mean, something like love gets squashed. Likewise, if you look at cinema, you can't say कि मेन स्ट्रीम फॉर्म में अगर आप कहानी बोल रहे हो तो आपको इसी किस्म की कहानी बोलनी पड़ेगी और इसी तरीके से बोलनी पड़ेगी. ये जो है ये टूट रहा है. Of late, in a very clear way, if you're asking for one distinct change, this is one change that we need to sort of acknowledge. Take the case of let's take our big cinema, pan-Indian, matlab, stars, bade stars there, the Khans are there, Akshay Kumar, Devgan, all these people are there, Ranveer. Okay, when they are there and when the film is mounted in a particular way, we believe that that is like big mainstream, big entertainment stuff. But of late you realize that even those, if they don't have meaningful content, if there is no script which actually resonates, it collapses. On the other hand, you have seen smaller films over the last 3 years or so. And smaller films, including those with meaningful content, but which are able to use the mainstream form.
Absolutely.
Rather well. So there is no contradiction that I am finding between what we call mainstream form, mainstream cinema, and meaningful cinema. I think meaningful content can very much be part of that because mainstream is not merely formula-driven films. It's not merely those which have certain फिक्स्ड कमर्शियल एलिमेंट्स के ये तो होना ही है, ये नहीं हो सकता है, वो नहीं हो सकता है, ये कैरेक्टर माँ का कैरेक्टर ऐसा नहीं हो सकता है. That is this very narrow band in which these formulas may be playing. But mainstream is much broader than that, much bigger than that. I mean, if you look at earlier filmmakers, people like Guru Dutt, cinema they used every melodrama, it used songs, dance, everything he used. And yet, meaningful. Bimal Roy, Mehboob Khan, all these people. Then you had even people like the parallel movement when they came in, they used the mainstream form to deliver their thing. And you look at Ardha Satya, you look at Manthan, that. Now I'm saying today, you're finding over the last few years or about a decade or so, see, various people, I mean, Vishal has been trying his own way of, I mean, he's using adaptation, but he's also catching the background. I mean, Haider was there, I mean, there was also Othello, which dealt with caste, Makbul. So, Omkara, sorry, not Othello. You look at Anubhav Sinha of late.
Absolutely.
Article 15, Thappad. All three are
amazing.
And all three actually have some star or the other.
Yes.
And yet it's meaningful. And it's worked.
Right.
And it has worked. So, ये जो line जो है ना, this is an artificial line, which is disappearing between what you call impactful or meaningful cinema and mainstream. I'm saying this can be accommodated using mainstream elements. You don't have to use all of them. Every film doesn't have to have song and dance and romantic sort of moments of the formula kind. No, don't need to have. But I'm saying the mainstream form, we must understand, Rafay, is very Catholic. It can accommodate every kind of content that you're really looking for. Choose a few of those elements and it works because they're available, not as a formula that you need to choose them. But that is the natural way of telling stories in the Indian subcontinent, and in which I include you too, Pakistani
Right.
cinema. With that, it's a composite culture, it's your culture, our culture, I mean, origin, same thing. वही narrative tradition से आप भी आए हैं, हम भी वहीं से आए हैं, तो हम उनमें से कुछ चीजें इस्तेमाल करेंगे भी. So this change I definitely find. The other change I'm also finding is that there is now a very clear acknowledgement that without a good script, it is impossible to make a good film.
Absolutely.
You can take a good script and a bad director might turn it into a bad film. But if you want to make a good film, it's impossible to do it with an indifferent script or a bad script. And hence, there is the rush to get good scripts. As a result of which, we find a lot of initiatives also happening. We have been trying from our side, the Screenwriters Association, very vigorously to ensure that there are enough initiatives which facilitate aspiring writers, new writers to further learn the craft and showcase it. We have the contests, we have the fellowships, we have our workshops, we have our conferences, we have our seminars. Constantly we are in the process of helping to, improve the caliber, groom and improve the caliber of writing. 2 film schools are there which are full-fledged. 2004 से पहले तो कोई film school में पढ़ाया भी नहीं जाता था.
बिल्कुल ठीक है.
पढ़ाया नहीं जाता.
बिल्कुल सही.
हुआ है ना, तो एक acknowledgement दे रहा है, दुरुस्त है, I would say. वो हो रहा है. So that change is definitely there. Writing and writers are being recognized, which is a good trend. I just wish it would accelerate. Because अभी भी जो होना चाहिए, जिस दर्जे का acknowledgement, जिस दर्जे का importance and value, उतना नहीं दिया जा रहा है.
अच्छा.
अभी भी there that struggle is there. Yeah, absolutely. So जारी. It's a process. It's going on.
Fair enough.
Conscious of that.
Fair enough. That's great. I mean, it is a constant progress, and it is a work in progress as well. And is that ये तो इसकी बात है कि हम evolution कैसे लेके जा रहे हैं. There is glamour, there's Bollywood, there's mainstream, there's commercial, there's indie, all sorts of content. Now, when you're writing your film, like Drokal, Aparan, Rajniti, Legend of Bhagat Singh, and all these films that you're writing, I mean, where are you getting inspiration from? Because most of these films are changing सिस्टम को चेंज करना, थोड़ा सा अलग हटके. क्या आपने कुछ विटनेस भी किया है? क्या आपको लाइक इज इट सिटिंग विद डायरेक्टर्स, इज इट सिटिंग इन द मिस्ट ऑफ द सिस्टम? हाउ इज इट हैपनिंग?
देखो, एक जर्नी तो रही है.
हाँ, ठीक है.
शुरुआत में आई रिमेम्बर व्हेन आई एंटर्ड द राइटिंग बिजनेस, what we need to realize is that the writer is a human being, a citizen first, and then a writer. You can't say that I am this sort of a person, this is my social ideology, or this is how I react to the world, this is my worldview, my perspective, and this is my writing, which is separate. ये तो मैं भैया सिर्फ व्यावसायिक रूप से करता हूँ. नहीं. A writer is a person कि जो वो है that gets reflected in his work, the kind of preoccupations that he might have. शुरुआत में when I came in, I remember द्रोहकाल जब गोविंद ने उनका ड्राफ्ट मुझे दिया था, गोविंद निकालानी साहब ने पढ़ा मैंने, and what appealed to me in that was this whole struggle for redemption. Okay, there is a character who, unfortunately, because of inordinate pressure on him, ends up betraying not just his friend, but therefore also his own ideals, his own principles. He betrays. He's a police officer, and he actually, succumbs to the pressure from the so-called militant, and this happens. And the pain that he goes through, the anguish, and the need to redeem himself. So that redemption, which seemed to be obviously a preoccupation with me, started reflecting in my work without me realizing it. So first was Drokal, which so happened it wasn't my story, it came to me. But that is what was really attracting me to it. And I suppose that's why Govind and I vibed. Because both of us realized that in our sort of culture, so to say, redemption is considered a very desirable possibility. Okay. We are सवेरे का भूला शाम को घर लौट आए तो उसे भूला नहीं कहते, वाल्मीकि का रेफरेंस किया जाता है, या पश्चाताप की भावना अगर सच्ची हो तो कुछ भी मुमकिन है. These are the guiding themes which are also prevalent in our culture. एक तो वो था.
सही.
Then Ghulam came about. Again, it was about redemption. Again,
Right.
it was about the guilt of a person and the struggle to redeem.
Right.
Likewise, it happened with Kache Khade, it happened with China Gate, it happened with Pukar. Suddenly, I
Sahi.
discovered that my own emotional, psychological preoccupation was obviously finding a sort of expression, an expression in my work, which is a good thing. Then I think the awareness, also given the kind of upheavals that India has been witnessing, and particularly the 2002 upheaval which took place, the carnage which took place in Gujarat, where Muslims were burned, butchered, raped, etc. Horribly,
Yes.
Unbearably shaking, sort of disturbing violence.
Absolutely.
And I began to also realize that something has changed. What had changed is that it's not that there weren't riots earlier. There was violence earlier also.
Yes.
But here what happened is that there is no guilt. Earlier there used to be this discomfiture after it had happened. People would feel queasy about it. People would feel uneasy about it. यार हो गया जोश वगैरह में, लेकिन ये वहाँ जो हुआ वो ठीक नहीं हुआ. But guilt had gone, and that made me extremely disturbed. And for years, it again a certain perspective began growing as to looking at it in a historical context, essentially finding the political understanding of a phenomenon like this. And when I say political understanding, I mean it very simply. I don't mean politicians. I don't mean power politics. No. What I mean is the connection between what individuals do, the choices that they make, the decisions that they commit to, the connection between those and larger forces, larger institutionalized forces which actually influence those. Once again, I'm not referring to individual politicians. I'm talking about a prevalent atmosphere, like say communal prejudice. When communal prejudice goes deep inside you, it becomes part of you, it becomes legitimated by your conscience, then you don't hesitate to witness, enjoy, feel satisfied by, or even commit these horrible acts of violence which take place.
Right.
Because it has been legitimated by your conscience, and that connection is what I continue to see. When a woman gets beaten up in a marriage and continues to survive in there, continues with the marriage, there is a certain institutionalized gender role, gender stereotyping that has been internalized by her as a result. That connection, you see, in that. Likewise, caste, etc. So you find these things around the world, that in every country, in every culture, in every sort of political space. And this began my preoccupation. So therefore, I remember even post Legend of Bhagat Singh. The Legend of Bhagat Singh, of course, and Bhagat Singh was that. I mean, he was a political activist, and for him the connection was absolutely transparent because he talked about nation building. And he said, therefore, I don't agree with the mainstream struggle which is taking place for freedom, because it's not merely a transfer of power that I'm looking for. I am looking actually for a transformation of this country to be transformed on the basis of equality, socialism, secularism, justice, these principles. And therefore his struggle was that, not merely for independence, of course, but in this way. And by the way, from Lahore, I mean, it was, and Bhagat Singh was a person of Lahore, and which is why it has been my abiding wish to visit Lahore. Last time when I came, unfortunately I couldn't go because the visa पे मैंने लिखवाया नहीं था.
हाँ, otherwise तो कुछ लोग गए थे, कुछ लोग नहीं कर सकते थे, but next time hopefully, yes.
So, that stories are also, it is also possible through stories to be able to unpack and reveal these kind of connections, and that I realized that even within the mainstream form it is possible to do that. So kuch had tak wo baat chali Ganga Jal, which I was advising the script advisor to Prakash on that. Apaharan, Rajniti, to a certain extent, that happened. Arakshan, it was meant to happen in a full-blown way. Chakravyuh, full-blown way. Satyagraha, full-blown way. So ये जो होने लगा. Then after that, the scripts which I also consulted on, like Mulk,
Yes.
Anubhav Mulk, Article 15, suffered all three. Once again, it was that. And people like अनुभव का एग्जाम्पल फिर से दे रहा हूँ क्योंकि मैंने उसके साथ काम किया है, इसके लिए उसके काम से मैं थोड़ा सा ज़्यादा वाकिफ हूँ, उसकी सोच से ज़्यादा वाकिफ हूँ कि his view is also that. And that is the enriching way, that is, according to me, the more meaningful way of storytelling, because that is also the more meaningful way in which we should have a perspective on understanding individuals and their, their choices, that we have to be able to see it in the context of that. And therefore, a political is to be able to contextualize your actions, your choices in this larger framework of what is it that has influenced that. So the personal to the political, the specific to the general, particular to the universal. This connection I find very, very interesting, very attractive to explore. So then that became the
Okay.
so it moved from, as I said, from my personal preoccupations,
Right. Of course.
redemption, etc. But now the perspective sort of evolved. So even if I were to tell the story in the most, like, too far, which is a film that is scripted, which is almost ready, and hopefully whether people go back to the cinema or whenever it can be released, it will be released.
Okay.
Fine work by the director, actor. Uski script, it's absolutely, I mean, it's there, boxing, etc. And yet, while I can't reveal the story to you, you will find that this, what I'm talking about, very naturally is there. It's not that there is a statement that the kahani rukti hai, and now we come up, देखो ये understanding. Then again the story resumes. Then again one pause and understand. No. I'm saying it's woven in. That is the way in which characters are sort of moving. So nothing is verbalized. Not a word is verbalized. But the way in which I am viewing them is that perspective, and as a result of which that perspective naturally comes into the scripting, and that is what I realize, or I hope will also be received in that way. So एक perspective का सवाल आ जाता है, नजरिए का सवाल आता है, सोच का सवाल कि राइटर की सोच क्या है, what is his world view, what is her perspective, and that is what will inform the way in which. और ये बात थोड़ी सी बढ़ती जा रही है.
अच्छा.
To a certain extent, we even found it in Zoya's film. To a certain extent, in Gully Boy, which also caught people's imagination. So पहले ये होता था कि the characters were in a bubble.
Right.
मतलब वो कहीं भी हो सकते हैं भाई. They don't have to be in this world. They don't have to be there. But if they belong nowhere and they belong everywhere.
Right.
भैया ये कहाँ है भैया ये स्कूल जहाँ ऐसे लोग कपड़े पहनते हैं और इस किस्म का उनका कल्चर हो रहा है, तो कहीं भी हो, कॉमिक बुक में ले लो, ठीक है.
सही.
अब मैं ये कह रहा हूँ कि इनकी जगह है, बिल्कुल होनी भी चाहिए, लेकिन बहुत सारी जगह जो खुल गई है, वो खुली हुई जगह के अंदर ही ऐसा मंथन चल रहा है, और नए लेखक जो आ रहे हैं वो भी सोच रहे हैं. They are thinking people, they are sensitive people, they are able to contextualize their stories in an identifiable milieu, which has its own sociology, which has its own politics, and as a result of it, the characters are emerging from that. So there is a specificity, Rafay, to the characters' individual actions and the milieu in which they are existing or surviving. And it becomes more wholesome. And the mainstream form absolutely accommodates.
Okay.
Yeah,
fair enough. This is wonderfully explained. I think beautifully explained. अच्छा, ये मुझे बताएं कि writing about these relevant issues, obviously very politics be involved with that. Were you ever troubled by any factions of the politicians out there? Any people who like, why are you writing about this? Why are you targeting these issues? Why are you going deep down? और ऐसा कभी नहीं हुआ?
फिल्म को लेके तो नहीं हुआ.
अच्छा.
Because फिल्म वर्क में नहीं हुआ, लेकिन I also do speak out many times publicly, and there is a certain platform which is as a wider viewership, etc. I don't hesitate to state my views. I mean, they're not meant to be controversial or provocative because that is not my personality. Okay, I don't say things for effect, but I do make my views fairly clear, and I stand for certain abiding principles like secularism. There is a socialistic view which I do have. I do feel terribly disturbed by injustice, inequality, exploitation, etc., gender violence and all. So I have spoken about these issues, and as a result of which, yes, have there been threats? Yes, there have been threats. Have I,
Right.
have I had reason, and has my family has had reason to be concerned about those? Yes, they have. I mean, I will admit that. So वो तो होता है, ये तो माहौल तो पूरी दुनिया में हो गया, हिंदुस्तान में तो है ही, पर आपके यहाँ कौन सा कम है, बाहर और देशों में कौन सा कम है, ये हो रहा है. And this is what we seem to be going through this phase of history where human civilization is unleashing hatred, prejudice, discrimination, violence, quite easily. It seems to be sort of really rising to the surface and gripping the ideologies of so many large numbers of people, and that is, so it's not going to go away so soon. So we have to be ready for it as citizens. But in terms of work, not so much. Only Arakshan, I think we had trouble when ironically, it's some Dalit parties, etc., which targeted the film before its release.
Right.
But because it dealt with the issue of reservation and stuff.
Right. Fair enough. I mean, I'll eventually build on to a couple of pointers as you've spoken about. एक सवाल मैं पूछूंगा कि आप लिखते भी हैं, writing भी करते हैं, and I'm asking a couple of questions in contrast to Pakistani screenplay writers as well. Do artists get to meddle with scripts? Have you ever encountered artists meddling with your scripts or trying to change any construct of the script? And if that happens, what do you do?
देख राफी, एक तो ये बात समझना जरूरी है कि while it is I who have written the script, absolutely, okay, it's not to be treated as something which is set in stone like the voice of God. Okay. It's a creative work. It deals with story, it deals with feelings, experiences, etc. As a result of which, the people who are going to be later involved in that should have the liberty to at least suggest or recommend an interpretation of certain things. What if, instead of saying this line, what if I do it in this way? Okay. Because the artist understands his craft better than I understand his craft. I understand my craft better than he understands my craft. So if this mutual balance is there, where I see that he is using his craft, he is using his talent to be able to convey what the script is trying to say, but in a different way. And maybe that is more effective, that might be more cinematic. Then in which case I need to have an open mind enough to say, yeah, in fact that might be more interesting. That might be better. We can do it that way. I have encountered that many times. And that's been fine. That becomes a partnership. Okay. Likewise with the director. However, if it's coming out of some rather foolish motives, like either ego issues where the artist feels that I am a powerful person, I am a big star, so how can I not here make my authority felt, or no, but I want to do it this way because this, and then people adamance and that stubbornness comes in purely because he believes I am a star and that it's being driven by that ego of his. Then that's absolutely foolish and it has to be fought. And have I fought? Yes, I have fought. Have I always won? No, because the key thing becomes the decision that the director takes. That the director is the one who's going to call the shots on the set. It's not me who's going to call the shots. If the director kowtows to the artist,
Yes.
then the writer's argument is out of the window. Okay, but the director, if supposing he's mature enough to be able to stand up to that artist and say, no, I think it's what he's saying is making more sense. In which case, it has to be the director's authority which has to be carried. Do all of them stand up to stars? No. Obviously, because that's what stars are, and stars are very powerful people. I mean, they make projects happen and stuff like that. That seems to be the unfortunate system. So, yes, there has been trouble. Yes, there are certain times that I have managed to make my view prevail, if indeed I believed that my view was actually better for the film than what the other suggestion was coming in. Yes. Have I always won? As I said, not necessarily. So it happens. I mean, one has to struggle with it. There are nasty experiences. with unthinking stars. There are good experiences with thinking. I remember one instance.
Yes, I would like to hear one instance. Please, please, for everyone. That'd be great. That'd be great to hear.
You know, I will give you one positive instance, and then I'll give you another one.
Yes.
The positive instance was that Pukar is what we were going to shoot, and in Ooty, it is a hill station in London. And the final polish to the dialogue was being given a couple of evenings before the shoot was to start. So we were all in the hotel together. Raj Santoshi was there, and Raj had, with the other writer who's friend of ours, K.K. Raina, had in the opening scene he had given some lines to the Lieutenant Colonel, who's the Colonel, who's played by Om Puri. And they read it out to me, saying, "Ye bolo Anjum kaisa लगता है?" We read it out, I said, "Bakwas hai. What's this? ये ऐसे कोई बोलता है? बात करो, what is this? This sounds like a very textbook, like a manual. It's an emergency situation going on there. और यहाँ ये भाषण दिए जा रहे हैं. What nonsense is this? It has to be more natural." And we got into a fight.
Okay.
I rewrote it in a particular way right then. They said, "No, that's not working because it's not carrying that weight." I said, "But he's troubled at that moment." And it became an unresolvable argument. Raj did a smart thing. He picked up the phone and he dialed Om Puri's room. And he said, "Om ji, niche aate ho." So he said, "Yeah." So Om came down, and this is the hallmark of a great artist, because Om knew the story. But the scenes had not been narrated to them yet. So they were being written. So Raj just thrust the scene under his nose and said, "Om ji, zara baith ke ye padhiye to." And Om, without batting an eyelid, without rehearsing anything, without even going over the paragraph once, he began reading. Rafay, the conviction and the authority with which he read that, because he knew that he was the colonel, so he was in charge of that particular operation, that mission. Matlab, I bit my tongue and held my ear. I said, it sounded absolutely perfect what they had written. So it is what the artist brought into the performance, and the conviction and the character authority that he conveyed. Suddenly those lines seemed absolutely correct. Yeah, the person like that in a tone like this would say that. And I said, correct, every word is correct. And of course, Raj had the good grace to not look at me and mock or laugh or, smirk.
Right.
So it was a lesson learned at that time that when it is a performing medium. I mean, it is going to go and be performed. Your lines are not going to be read, in a book. They're actually going to be said out by characters who are acting it out. Therefore, after that, whenever I wrote dialogue, I always said it out aloud. I always performed to myself, and I still do. From every character's point of view, you have to know what does it feel like when it's coming out. पेपर पे अच्छा लगता है, बुरा लगता है, बोलने में कैसा? दूसरी एक stupid, absolutely ridiculous. And I won't name the film, obviously, as I won't name the star.
Why would you name the film? That's the fun part.
No, because it would appear childish, right now, after years, about them. There was where it was to do simply with what is it that the character is wearing at the as simple as that.
Okay.
And that was a time when these costume designers and all these people had become very big, and so therefore, as a result of which, every star was very concerned about what he or she was wearing. Most of the time, regardless of whether it fit with the character or it didn't fit with this character or situation, it doesn't matter. Because this is how they wanted to look, and lakhs of rupees were spent on just that costume, and so much of attention. I wish they would spend so much attention on the damn scene, okay, rather than this. The whole day is gone in just the character deciding on one bloody costume and the actor. What is going on? Unfortunately, in that mood, that the whole, in that atmosphere, they came to think about what is it the character will wear at home.
Right.
And I had written down, this is what
Okay.
and it included chappals. तो घर पे तो आदमी चप्पल ही पहनेगा ना यार.
बिल्कुल सही.
आ गया. My God, what an argument! What an argument began with that.
Okay.
While initially when I placed my point and I talked about credibility and believability and a certain warmth and informality and the audience relates to the character कि हाँ ये हमारे जैसा ही है ये सब बड़ी बड़ी चीजें वो करता है, but he's also rather there's a certain nice ordinariness to it, to this character, so it's easy to relate to, and all these arguments I made, the unit was there and the director they seemed to be nodding correct के बाद correct
Right.
के बाद. And then the star began his argument. And which I'm sorry to say this, there is no merit compared to what I was saying, even if I say so myself. I was talking from the character's point of view. He was
Right.
talking about the impact point of view and what
Okay.
it would actually like. And he went on. He won't give up. I won't give up. He won't give up. I won't give up. Voices started getting raised. And I wasn't such a veteran writer. Eventually, I had to back off because the director immediately switched. The director, producer, they switched. They were waiting to see who wins.
Okay.
They were, to my great misfortune, not stepping in. When I kept turning to them, I said, "What is your view?" When I turned to the director, I said, "What do you feel, man, about this? You need to see, no? You're the one who's directing this damn thing here."
Right. Absolutely.
Started getting very intense. He kept saying, "नहीं सुन लेते हैं, देखो क्या बोल रहे हैं और हम सुन लेते हैं." मतलब he needed to see. If I prevailed, he would go with that. If that one prevailed, what is this nonsense? And eventually the star refused to wear chappals. There you go.
Wow.
I said the shirt would be out. He said, I won't keep my shirt out. I said, you're at home. He said, when the shirt comes out, I said, when the shirt comes out, it has to look crumpled because it has been tucked in. When it comes out, it's bound to be crumpled. He said, how can I possibly wear a crumpled shirt? Get out. So this kind of, I mean, there are times that there is an anxiety that stars have. I mean, if you look at it from their point of view, it is understandable. I'm not saying you should accept it, but at least one can understand it from this anxiety point of view. That you feel that if the trend is that everybody is looking good and looking attractive on the screen, and if I don't do so, I might be taking a big risk. I might get qualified as one of the art cinema. जैसा ये behave करता है, and they used to hate the word arts.
Really? Okay.
Because for simple reasons, it's not about the quality of the cinema, etc. They might even appreciate that or not. But the fact is, it doesn't make money at the box office.
Absolutely.
Popularity
Absolutely.
and their career, future of their career is determined only by that. Of how much money do your films make at the box office? Do you open a film or do you not? So these are their yardsticks. Now the difficult job is to take their anxiety, their parameters, and what the script requires, and the way in which it should be put together, and marry these two in such a way that fellow doesn't get too upset. At the same time, the script doesn't get become too dishonest, and it's quite a juggling act, which sometimes filmmakers.
I know. I can imagine because same issues we have, and the only reason I'm asking is because we've encountered them, and it's pretty much similar in both the countries as well. अच्छा आपको लेट तो नहीं हो रहा ना? मुझे अभी एक और सवाल. अच्छा मुझे आपसे पूछना था कि आपने बात की कि you would be involved in चप्पल है, कमीज है. राइटर का रोल स्क्रिप्ट लिखने के बाद कितना प्रोमिनेंट है? क्या राइटर अभी इन योर केस आई डू अंडरस्टैंड यू वेरी डीप, मगर काफी राइटर्स बोलते हैं कि जी बस आई एम टॉकिंग इन टर्म्स ऑफ पाकिस्तान की, भाई मैंने स्क्रिप्ट लिख ली है, मैंने डायरेक्टर को दे दिया, आई हैव गिवन इट, हैंड इट ओवर, नाउ इट्स हिज प्रेरोगेटिव, ही वांट्स टू टेक ओवर, ही कैन डू इट. What exactly is the role of a writer till the end, till the conception, from wardrobe to looks? How does it work?
See, एक तो राफे एक बेसिक एटीट्यूड को हमको देखना पड़ेगा इसमें कि जब राइटर स्क्रिप्ट लिखता है, so he is also seeing the film as he is writing. पहली बार जब फिल्म बनती है वो पेपर पे बनती है,
सही है.
दूसरी बार जब बनती है जब वो सेट पे जब प्रिंसिपल फोटोग्राफी शुरू होती है वगैरह, वो बनती है जब फिल्म प्रोड्यूस हो रही है, और तीसरी बार उसके ऊपर जो असर आता है विच वो एडिटिंग पोस्ट प्रोडक्शन वगैरह को लेके भी एक उसका जो है इम्पैक्ट और उसका एक थोड़ा सा बदलाव उसके अंदर आ सकता है. तो अगर राइटर कंसीव करके लिख रहा है पेपर पे सारी फिल्म, ही और शी शुड बी इन्वेस्टेड अकॉर्डिंग टू मी in how that is going to shape up. So पहले तो ये होता है कि the overlap with the director becomes extremely important because there is a vision with which the writer has written. There is a certain perspective which is coming in, and that perspective has to be passed on to the director. That even if he is making a change, he has to do so after understanding what is being intended in this. तो उसके लिए राइटर का इन्वॉल्वमेंट डायरेक्टर के साथ एक ओवरलैपिंग फेज में बहुत जरूरी हो जाता है. इसके आगे, when the director goes on to the set, etc., a lot depends upon the personal equation of understanding between the writer and the director. अगर डायरेक्टर को राइटर पे विश्वास है, अगर उसको ये यकीन है कि इसका इन्वॉल्वमेंट, इसके इन्वॉल्वमेंट से इंटरफियरेंस नहीं आएगा, वो अड़ नहीं जाएगा कि नहीं 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 आप ऐसे नहीं शूट कर सकते, ऐसे ही करना चाहिए, क्योंकि दैट इज व्हाट आई हैव रिटन, क्योंकि दैट इज फूलिश, बिकॉज राइट नाउ इट इज स्टेज गोइंग ऑन. वो रिले रेस की तरह मैंने भी बताया कि भैया दूसरे को आपने बेटन हैंड ओवर कर दिया, वो दौड़ रहा है, then you can't go running next to him and say नहीं नहीं ऐसे नहीं, तू यहाँ थोड़ा लेफ्ट पे आ जा, मतलब मेरा काम है, मैं करूँगा यार. सही. So without interfering, but offering support, offering consultancy, offering guidance and advice when needed. Though the prerogative of the decision making is that of the director, it always helps if the director is in touch with the writer, because there is no one who understands the characters and the script more than the writer, because he's lived with it. तो अगर ये कॉन्फिडेंस रहता है, तो कभी कभी डायरेक्टर्स होते हैं उनका एक ऑल्सो ईगो इशू आ जाता है कि भाई आप स्टार्स को हैंडल कर रहे हैं बराबर, तो एक अथॉरिटी दिखानी पड़ती है वहाँ, तो भैया स्टार्स बहुत ज़्यादा अड़ ना जाए, बहुत ज़्यादा क्वेश्चन ना जाए, तो पहले से देयर इज अ सर्टेन काइंड ऑफ वे इन विच दे बिगिन डीलिंग विद हाउ दे वांट द फिल्म टू हैपन. तो वो स्टार गेट्स द क्यू कि बच्चा जिसका यू कांट सॉर्ट ऑफ टिंकर टू मच. अब उसके अंदर चक्कर ये होता है जो राइटर आ जाए, राइट, and the writer is also somebody who understands the characters and all these more. And if the stars begin to ask the writer, there are many directors who feel very, very shaken up. They feel कि भैया मेरी तो authority erode हो गई, anxiety रहती है. और वो बार directors आते हैं, 200-300 लोग हैं, every hour, not even every hour, every few minutes somebody is asking you for a decision. सर इसका ये करना है, ये जीन्स पहनेगा चलेगा, वो सर यहाँ से लाइटिंग कर रहा हूँ, ये लाइट नहीं मिल रही तो वहाँ से खिड़की खुलवा दूंगा. They're constantly having to make decisions, and it's a horrible job. अब उसके अंदर the control over the actors अगर हिल जाता है because the actors begin to start speaking with the writer, so a lot of directors feel very upset. So it's a delicate equilibrium which has to be maintained, which is why it's essential कि director एक confident enough to consult the writer. I've been fortunate that at least I work more with Raj and Prakash, Rajkumar. Right. With both of them, I had a very, very, very easy, very mutually respectful equation there. With Raj ke saath, I used to be on the set a lot of the times because he used to want me on the set. He said, no, पहले 7 दिन आपको तो रहना ही, 7-15 दिन आप पूरा रहो तो मेरे लिए बहुत अच्छा है. या नहीं आपको रहना है because you have to guide me and all that. तो काफी frankly और openly बोलते तो काफी rely करते थे मुझ पर. Prakash also, while he is a complete filmmaker in himself, but he also used to want, ये शुरुआत में तो एटलीस्ट एक आध हफ्ता तो आप रहो साथ में, अच्छा रहेगा, थोड़ा सा अपन मिलके करेंगे, तो I'll also find my rhythm, etc. Though he is Prakash is an extremely confident man and a very self-dependent person, but that was the nature of our collaboration in such a way and our personal bonding. So it depends on also on that. So it's on the director's personality, on the writer's the wisdom that he doesn't go there and interfere, and of course the fact that they share a certain bond. But it is desirable. According to me, अगर ये हो तो बड़ी अच्छी बात है. I've sat in on edits. I mean, Rajniti, we did several edits because bड़ी film थी, we had to be very careful. A couple of whole edits I did myself when I told Prakash, no, allow me. Let me just sit with the editor. Really? I will recut the whole thing. फिर आप देख लो आपको क्या लगता है. Certain things he accepted from there, certain things he had issues which I had taken out and all. So it became a collaborative process, and which is, I feel, good. I feel it's good.
Zabardast. That's great. And sir, speaking of being actively involved on sets with scripts, इसी सवाल में 2 parts है. एक तो ये है that is it important for a script to have multiple drafts, or is it imperative you should have multiple drafts? क्या final एक ही होता है? Because मैं बड़ा खुल के बोल रहा हूँ कि lots of time in Pakistan a writer thinks that मैंने ये चीज लिख ली है and बस this is final. how dare you change it to multiple drafts, and how is that process happening? Do you have a team? दूसरा ये है कि do you go to a set with a complete script, or you sometimes have an incomplete script, and you're working as you progress?
Okay, let me take a both. Number one, Rafay, we have to acknowledge, and please go and tell those Pakistani writers of yours. And if you can't tell them, then just put them in touch with me. Okay, I'd love to have a
I'm going to
conversation.
take this clip, and I'm going to put this clip first.
Yeah. See,
Right.
screenwriting, you must understand, derives a lot from rewriting. Okay. In fact, it has also been said that screenwriting is rewriting. Matlab, when you rewrite a script, that is when you begin to unpeel the layers and allow yourself to go deeper, deeper, deeper with every draft. There is nothing, there's no weakness, there is no failure in that. Rewriting is a good thing. Okay, लोगों को लगता होगा शायद आप जिस दिन का जिक्र कर रहे हो, ये रीराइट करना मतलब कि पहले तो अच्छा काम किया ही नहीं था, मतलब मैं अच्छा काम कर ही नहीं सकता हूँ, इस तरीके से एक फीलिंग आती है, एंजाइटी आती है, तो मतलब रीराइट करना बड़ा इतनी बार। एक आपको सिंपल एक हकीकत सुनाओ, राजू हिरानी जो अभिजात जोशी के साथ उन्होंने काम किया कई फिल्मों में, तो लगे रहो मुन्ना भाई, which a lot of people liked because and it was a lot of people universally well liked. So they did 50 drafts, 50. Go tell your Pakistani writers, 50 drafts, because they had to have a very very delicate equilibrium. भैया गांधी जी आ रहे हैं, उनको किस तरीके से ट्रीट करना, एक आध सुर गलत लग गया तो again you rewrite the whole thing, etc. 50 drafts, राजू said they did. तो ये बाकी कौन है लोग जो बोलते हैं कि भैया हम रीराइट नहीं करेंगे, हमने जो लिख दिया सो लिख दिया। बेटा, there is constant rewriting taking place. So that is very important. Ghulam, which I wrote, was actually based on the waterfront, जो एक classic film थी हॉलीवुड की, मार्लन ब्रांडो वगैरह वाली, बट शुल्डर ने लिखी थी, और यही मुझे कहा गया, the brief from the भट्ट was के भैया हमको ये अडेप्ट करना है। उस जमाने में कुछ खास ऐसा वो कॉपीराइट वगैरह में कॉन्शियसनेस था नहीं, हम नए थे, माहौल यही था, तो हमने भी उस टाइम पे हाँ बोल दिया कि अच्छा ठीक है। पहले थोड़ा सा टोकन रेजिस्टेंस दिया कि ये तो बन चुकी है, तो ये कुछ और करते हैं, नहीं ये हमको पसंद है, तो जिस तरीके से आपको करना है आप कीजिए, बट दिस इज द कर्नल दैट वी वांट कि भैया एक लड़का है, उसका भाई वगैरह। So in that, I turned it around, but the basic nuclear energy came from there.
Right.
I did 19 drafts, and it is an adaptation, not from a book.
Wow, adaptation
from a damn movie. 19 times I read. Go tell your Pakistani writers.
Tell them.
So no film of mine has been done with less than 7 drafts. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि सारे ड्राफ्ट मौजूद हैं। Of course, when you rewrite, that becomes the legitimate draft. Then that becomes the legitimate. तो वो करते जो आता है, that is what. और उसके बाद भी अगर बदलने की आवश्यकता हो, सेट पे गए, वो देखा, लाइन बोला, कुछ ख्याल आया, डायरेक्टर को तो नहीं यार ये देखो, तो लाइक प्रकाश वुड कॉल और राज वुड कॉल, भैया अंजुम नहीं ये चलो उस सीन में इस तरीके से करें तो sometimes I would say, हाँ हो सकता है, sometimes I have to sort of argue back by saying कि नहीं ये करने से वो वाले सीन में तकलीफ होगी, हाँ correct. So this process is a good process.
सही. Right.
राजू हिरानी की बात कर रहे हैं, राजू एंड अभिजात they wrote 3 Idiots. उसके अंदर एक सीन था जो सबके दिल को छू गया, इनफैक्ट हार्ट ब्रेकिंग सीन, एक कैरेक्टर है कि नंबर जॉय, जिसने वो ड्रोन बनाया है, लेकिन वो कोशिश करने से होने पर ही इज कन्विंस कि हो सकता है मुझे थोड़ा और वक्त चाहिए, और वो जो प्रिंसिपल जो है वो देता नहीं है, उसके बाद तो फेल कर दिया वगैरह वगैरह, दैट बॉय डाइज, ही कमिट्स।
राइट।
अब उन्होंने सीक्वेंस पहले ये लिखा था कि वो ड्रोन जो है, ये आमिर का कैरेक्टर जो है वो कर रहा है, उसके साथ कुकिंग करेंगे और हो जाता है, और वो उन्हें लगता है, दे फील वेरी हैप्पी, सो दे गो रनिंग अप to tell him, और वो दरवाजा खुलता नहीं है, and then they break the door down and discover that the fellow is dead. ये सीन लिखा गया था, उस दिन सीन शूट होने जा रहा था, सवेरे राजू हिरानी को ख्याल आता है कि, and that is great creativity, because ड्रोन का है, उसका अचीवमेंट है। ड्रोन क्या होता है कि भैया कैमरा फिट करके सब कुछ दिखता है उसको, ड्रोन को, जो हमको मॉनिटर पे दिखता है। He said, why not use that? उसको ख्याल आया। So therefore he thought कि what if the drone goes up and Amir takes it to Joy's window and says, Joy, ye dekh, tera ho gaya, tu uda. And there, through that, they realize, shit, he's hanged himself. And there are, I mean, it is 50% greater impact than merely running up and knocking on the door. And
Absolutely, absolutely.
He called his co-writer and he said, देख ये मैं सोच रहा हूँ इस तरीके से. And Abhijat said, yeah. On the morning of the shoot of a big film, that part got rewritten, the scene got rewritten. So what is your Pakistani writer talking about? अगर ये रीराइटिंग का अगर वो उसे बोला नहीं ये फाइनल ड्राफ्ट है तो ये बात नहीं आती इसके अंदर. The script writer cannot feel insecure कि अरे यार मेरा बदल दिया. अरे बदल दिया is a good thing because what he is doing is वही आपका intention है कि they discover ironically when the breakthrough has taken place of that invention. Ironically, they discover right at the same time that the person who's done that invention is dead out of disheartenment. ये बात तो आपकी आ ही रही है.
Right.
Greater impact से आ रही है. ये आपके अकल में नहीं है.
मैं कुछ नहीं मैं तो अपने थोड़े experiences बयान कर रहा हूँ which I encountered and I thought it's great to hear it from you because you know they will be watching and they'll be listening as well and I hope they understand. ठीक है हमारी छोटी सी industry but we take great inspiration to Indian content and cinema which is a fact. Now sir I want to move on to the most important thing is that you are leading the Indian Association of Writers as well and you are playing a very forefront on that. हमारे पास पाकिस्तान के अंदर जो है ना कोई भी writers guild नहीं है. We don't have any sort of guilds. We don't have any sort of association which protects the writers, which talks about their rights. No concept whatsoever. And you are leading that. And I talk about it a lot. Like I don't think the producers are active. Why is it important to have a writers association? Why is it important to have a guild? What do you achieve from it? And what all do you do? How do you form it? And role क्या है? I would like you to shed some light on it.
I'll tell you. पहले तो राफे एक बात समझो कि I am not leading the association.
Okay.
Yes,
I thought I did some research, but you know,
No.
thing was there.
I mean, I've never taken any post as such.
Right.
I mean, what you can say, I'm a member of the committee,
Active member.
and I'm one of their more senior members.
Absolutely. Okay.
Why is it? And so, बाकी team भी है जो अच्छा काम कर रहा है.
Absolutely.
Now the thing is, why is a union important? Because of one simple fact. The writer as an individual and the producer as an individual, the bargaining power is so unequal that it is impossible for this writer with his weak bargaining power as an individual to be able to get fair terms and just terms and have an arrangement based on mutuality. So generally it is the leverage of the producer which dictates the nature of the arrangement between them, including the fees, the credit, the termination, and all these important terms, which is determined by the contract. So, because of this unequal bargaining power, which you will find everywhere in every industry, an individual worker against an industrialist, there is no comparison in terms of how equal they can possibly be, because they can't. It's disproportionate. Now, to rectify this, historically what we have had are trade unions. What is a trade union? It's a collective of workers which has a certain representative body, and here what happens is that when that representative body is negotiating with the industrialist on behalf of the collective of workers, this power is incomparably higher than what an individual can have. So collective bargaining tends to rectify that imbalance. And because now here what happens is that if there is disagreement on terms, it is going to affect all the workers, which means that if this trade union body declares that we will not cooperate with these terms, then the factory shuts down because everybody united under the umbrella of the trade union, because they are members of the trade union, they are bound to follow that. As a result of it, because of this unity, the industrialist is forced to negotiate fair terms for the workers. Likewise with writers. You see Writers Guild of America, you see Screenwriters Association and various other guilds around the world. This is exactly what we're looking for, is there is justice only through collective bargaining. So barring a few of us senior writers who manage to get favorable terms because we have the experience and because perhaps there is a certain demand that there may be or whatever, because they need us more. As a result of which we might be able to negotiate and get those terms. But the rank and files, I'm talking about new writers, I'm talking about aspiring writers, those who are just one or two films old, etc., they get massively exploited because the
Yes, they
contracts
do.
tend to become one-sided by default position, obviously, because the studio and the production house has a battery of lawyers who is very keen to ensure that the producer is protected and to hell with the writer. Now,
Right.
to correct this balance, therefore, a union becomes essential. So, what the union tries to do is it tries to ensure that their flock gets, their rights are protected, that there are certain standard clauses which we are currently negotiating with, that there are certain standard principles on which writers and writers' contracts are based, as a result of which it benefits the writers. Number two, if there is a dispute between the writer and the producer, the writer on by himself or herself again doesn't have the wherewithal to be able to seek justice. But if he were to complain to the union, then the union gets into the act. Okay, and then the union has a dispute settlement committee and it requests the producer to come to the table to discuss what the dispute is, whether it's payment dispute, whether it's a copyright dispute, plagiarism dispute, it's a credit dispute, it's very important. So this becomes an arbitration body and they will take this seriously. They may not take the individual writer too seriously by dismiss. A lot of them do that.
Right.
The writer may not have the wherewithal to go to court. Where what happens is that the union does the adjudication. In case the producer still doesn't agree, the union doesn't have judicial enforcement powers. But the whole case which has been investigated and a report which is prepared, the writer can take that to the court. That becomes a ready-made screenplay for the judge to be able to have a look. Oh, so this is what happened. So he becomes very clear. So now a lot of high court judges actually ask a writer complainant, did you approach your union? And if you haven't, go back and approach your union and then bring us whatever happens, either resolve it there or bring us the decision. If you have approached, then that's part of the dossier which is given that yes, this is the report of our union. So they're beginning to take this process seriously because we do our job well. So a good union, a just union, a transparently functioning union, a democratically functioning union is extremely important for the writing community everywhere, including in Pakistan. So I am really appalled that you don't have a group. You should start an association.
लगे हुए हैं वो कोशिश करें सर ठीक है now just last two more questions I have. I know I'm taking my time. दो और हैं sir. We've come into the time of COVID-19 when everything is stopped and nothing is working. I do understand the responsibilities go on to producers and everything and how to make the environment work. In your opinion, how do you see things being practiced with precaution? This is not going for a while. Some far-fetched thoughts from you. I think कैसा आपको नजर आता है क्या होगा? हम भी देख रहे हैं वैसे इंडियन इंडस्ट्री को बहुत लोग देख रहे हैं कि क्या क्या कैसे इवॉल्व कैसे निकलेंगे. What's happening in India right now with the film industry?
Recently, I was in a webinar with some stars, there was a couple of producers, director, financier, conducted by a lawyer. All of them seemed very optimistic that it shouldn't be very long and there'll be no permanent change in viewing habits. People will still come back to cinema halls and things will go back to business as usual. I'm not so optimistic right now, given the nature of uncertainty which this COVID has unleashed. There's all kinds of mutations taking place. The vaccine, if it comes out, yesterday I was reading the report from the official of WHO, which said that even though clinical trials have begun, not before March can human beings be administered that. Which means we're talking about then when it comes in, and India is 1.3 billion people we're talking about. वो सब करते, by the time people feel absolutely safe that when you're sitting next to a person in a cinema hall and watching this, and if a person sniffles or coughs and the hall won't empty out, so for that stage to take place, it's going to be a while. So will we have to re-look at how is it that we make our films, on which is the platform on which we make them for. So if we're making it for the web, making it for satellite, and it has to be made, which can be viewed at home, then it has to be approached in a particular way, it has to be scripted in a particular way, take account of that. Have we begun doing that yet? I don't think so, because people are still waiting and watching. It's a little too early to take those major decisions, because in case it lifts, then we might go back. Are there certain filmmakers which are already contemplating releasing their movies online, because costs are there and the interest mounts, and so it becomes unviable to hang on to a movie indefinitely, and then when it comes out in the theater there'll be a glut of cinema halls, so the middle and smaller ones tend to get lost in that.
Right.
As a result of which, would it be a wise decision? I imagine maybe it is, and yet the exhibitors are obviously very upset, because they feel at a time like this, theater owners and filmmakers should stand hand in hand, which is also a demand from their side, and it seems to be, from their point of view, it's a legitimate demand that unless we stand side by side with each other when we need each other, you can't just abandon it and say, well, yeah, I have another platform, thank you very much, I'm going there. But the fact is, look at it from the filmmaker's point of view, there is also a certain argument there. So it's not going to be easy as increasing number of movies start coming onto web platforms, and that is likely to also affect the economics of exhibitors. And if it remains shut for say a year, another year, already it's been shut for 3 months, another year, if it remains shut, obviously a lot of halls take a beating, very bad beating, because all start going to seed.
Right.
Nobody visits them. So it's not going to be so easy for us to bounce back as some of us seem to believe. I don't think so. Now, as far as writers are concerned, is it a good time? It's a good time in a way, because it gives you the enforced discipline of staying at home. And what do you do staying at home? You can't just while away your time having beer all day and watching movies. You're also writing. All of us are doing. So the quantum of writing being done right now, is it likely to be much higher than otherwise? Yeah, there are no unnecessary meetings, there's no travel time, there are no holidays.
Right, no excuses whatsoever.
So May vacation would have been a holiday otherwise. Okay,
absolutely.
There's no off with the family. Sit right here.
Absolutely.
And how much can you play with your kid, man? I mean, okay, you play 1 hour, 2 hours. It is right. Given this, but yet there is, if films are not being immediately planned and nobody knows when is it that they will go onto the floor, so producers don't know when the money will start rolling in, because only after film gets confirmed will the studios start giving in money. Right now it's very difficult to confirm a film. What star dates are you talking about? Number two, the studio will say, hang on, I don't know where things are headed, so let us wait. When things are clear, we will work out a deal.
Right.
So given that, if you go back down the chain, then the writer doesn't necessarily get paid for that. So we might have to deal with lesser payments, with more delayed payments coming in, if at all things get close. So everything is going to be a little tentative for now, I feel. The only good thing is, and might sound a little hard to say that to writers, is that this is the time to do a lot of spec writing. Build your own script bank. Okay. Push away the anxiety that मैं लिख तो लूँ इतनी मेहनत से 3 महीना or whatever. लेकिन अगर ये स्क्रिप्ट नहीं लिखी तो अगर मेरी तो इतनी मेहनत वेस्ट हो जाएगी ना, तो why don't I wait to see कि भैया क्या हो सकता है, आइडिया लेवल पे, स्टोरी लेवल पे डिस्कस कर लूँ और उसके बाद मैं लिखना शुरू करूँ. ये डर को दूर रखते हुए अगर हम अपने विश्वास के साथ, जो हमको लगता है कि भैया ये स्क्रिप्ट अच्छी बन सकती है, ये मैं लिखना चाहता हूँ, चाहती हूँ, और वो अगर हम लिखें, then the point is that the number of scripts that India will be ready with by the time the lockdown fully lifts and when somewhere there is light, भैया films will be made, we'll be ready with this. Producers will be spoiled for choice. Writers will be proud of the fact that earlier भैया 10 स्क्रिप्टें अच्छी मार्केट में घूम रही थी, which are in production worthy scripts. आज भैया 50. What a glorious. And that will also empower writers, because if you have good scripts at your command, you are also in a position to demand. No, these are the terms. तैयार स्क्रिप्ट है, तेरे को चाहिए तो ये काम तो बोले नहीं तो थैंक यू वेरी मच, मैं किसी और के पास जाऊँ. Suddenly the whole thing can shift. Okay, writers can become more empowered. So I feel that this is what we should be doing.
This is the time. Sir, why we left social media? आपसे एक तरीका था, एक जरिया था काम, you know, I mean, why? I mean, although we are in touch, of course, yeah, but why have you gone?
देखो एक दो कारण. एक तो ये कि जो माहौल जो बन गया है और खास करके मैंने भी जो झेला है for the last 2.5 years or so, कि अगर खुल के कुछ लिखो अपने मन के विचार, खास करके जो पॉलिटिकल एस्पेक्ट के हो या सोशल एस्पेक्ट के हो, इश्यूज के बारे में हो, firstly, there's an unnecessary discomfiture which I began to notice, even amongst those people who are supposed to be your friends, Facebook पे जो friends होते हैं, मेरे पे तो 5 एक रहा है. Because of their silence itself, you realize that they don't want to comment on that. There is a discomfiture. Number 2, the engagement was rarely meaningful, if at all there was feedback or posts to आते थे replies. Barely meaningful, very, very little. Most of it either were people who sort of hotly disagreed with you, or only those people wrote in who said, correct, sir, correct. So there is no discussion taking place. It's a platform which is so wide. People who disagree can come and actually have a debate. It's as if that scope for that discourse is completely gone. The scope for having a discussion between two differing points of view seems to have just boiled down to some minuscule, inconsequential level. So therefore, वो तो हो नहीं रहा. तीसरी बात ये थी कि बहुत सारा समय चला जाता है उसके अंदर. बहुत सारा मतलब मेरे लिए वो बहुत सारा गिना जाता है कि even getting on to Facebook, obviously you have those notifications which come, so and so has posted this, so and so. Some of it might be interesting, so you go there, you have a look. It is not. But even just to confirm whether it is or it is not, there's a whole lot of things you have to go through. Then somebody sent this query, somebody sent that. So out of the 100% time that you might be spending on that, sometimes I realize that actually the value of, for me, intellectually and otherwise, is like 10%.
Right.
I had begun using it only to make announcements or to campaign for the elections of the trade union that I am part of, or conference है, workshop है, SW का कोई program है. So because I have a lot of so-called followers on Facebook and friends, तो एक बात थोड़ी सी फैलती थी. And I realized that now there are enough other people in the union who are also doing that. The union has its own page, etc. I don't need to really sort of get into that. If there are SW elections, तो तब एकदम critically जरूरत पड़ेगी, तब करूँगा. और दूसरी बात देखो, दोस्त जो है, अगर राफी ये कहता है कि भैया अंजुम के साथ टच में रहना है और वो फेसबुक पे नहीं है, तो क्या तुम टच में नहीं रह सकते हो? क्या तुम टच में नहीं रहोगे? भैया तुम मेक इंडिविजुअल कॉल्स. सिर्फ फेसबुक पे काफी सारे व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप से भी मैं निकल गया. भैया ये कहकर कि भैया यू आर ओनली शेयरिंग फॉरवर्ड्स एंड जोक्स एंड ये इन्फॉर्मेशन आया फॉरवर्ड कर दो, ये इन्फॉर्मेशन अच्छा कुछ आया कार्टून में फॉरवर्ड कर दो. देयर इज नो पर्सनल एंगेजमेंट. Most of it are damn forwards and those kind of posts. I'm not interested. I want to be in touch with you. So let us see. I'm not on your group. You want to be in touch with me, you get in touch with me. If you don't get in touch with me, then I will know. So thank you. That's not a problem. We have treated these larger groupings and social media as a substitute for real meaningful interaction in individual relationships. And I don't want to get carried away. I would rather have fewer people, but people who actually want to be in touch with me, and I want to be in touch with them.
Fair enough. ठीक है. Anjum sir, it's been a pleasure and honor. जो आखिरी सवाल मेरा आपसे है वो ये है कि लोग देख रहे हैं, पाकिस्तानी फिल्ममेकर्स देख रहे हैं, young talent is tuning in. Some thoughts, some positive thoughts, like what to expect, what not to expect. And when you do conclude, I also want to know what are we expecting from you, coming from your end when this virus goes away, the products as well.
देखो, I may express some skepticism and in some issues a lack of optimism, yes. But if you look at my defining characteristic, I am an optimist. So I do believe in the whole efficacy of struggle. I feel कि अगर मसला सामने होता है उसके साथ अगर हम स्ट्रगल कर रहे हैं, it invariably leads to some meaningful consequence. So I would say कि invariably historically अगर देखा जाए तो जब भी इंसानियत के सामने कोई क्राइसिस आई है, कोई ऐसा हादसा हुआ है, ऐसा एपिसोड आया है कि जहाँ एक लोग हिल गए हैं, suddenly things appear meaningless, difficult to make sense out of things, कहानियों ने हमेशा के रिस्पॉन्ड किया है. Stories have always helped us to make sense of the world, whether it's good literature, whether it's drama, whether it's cinema, okay, always. This is the time that storytellers actually should be looking within and looking without to see what is it that they're responding to and what is their response to that. And that response should come out in the form of stories. So I personally have always advocated that there are stories lying buried in everybody's heart. And this is the time that we should be concentrating on writing. Non-writers who do not consider themselves writers, I never considered myself a writer. I made a career spanning 28 years, a non-writer coming into a writing field and managing a fairly decent career over 28 years. It says something to you. So is there any inspiration that you can take from me? Number one is this. Okay, it's possible if you really put your mind to it. Number two, I've had 10 film releases with my writing credit. Rafay, out of those, 7 have been commercial flops. Only 3 films have really hit the mark in terms of box office success. Gulam, Kache Dhagi and Rajabali. That's it.
Right.
I have survived. I have not only survived, I can tell you I have also thrived. That I have never lost my interest in writing. Every new project that I take up with more enthusiasm than I took up the previous one, which might have been a failure at the box office. And even the script might have been good. So I don't consider myself a loser. I don't consider myself a loser at all, in spite of these statistics. Because my enthusiasm for telling stories, my enthusiasm for exploring newer ways and newer themes which can come out in cinema is unflagging. It only escalates with every project. So this, I say, if at all, for new writers who are anxious about failure, I think they should remember Anjum Rajabali. This man, with so many failures, with not very great talent backing him up, if he is able to make it, that means it is possible. Why? Because you're dedicated to your work.
Absolutely.
If you love your work, then I think everything begins to fall into place. So this is what I would tell all the young writers, new writers, even those writers who might be feeling a bit shaky. I'm much older than you, so please give me the liberty of, giving you a piece of advice which ordinarily I don't have. It's possible. Just do what you love. And as far as I'm concerned, Tufan is one thing which has already been written, which
Right.
is out. Apart from that, there is a film which I have written, like in which was called Salute, then it was called Sare Jahan Se Acha, which was based on the life of Wing Commander Rakesh Sharma. I hope it sees the light of day. Producers are very keen, director is keen. Let's see what happens with that. And there's something else that I'm working on which I can't talk about right now because it's going to slightly, it's at that confidential stage.
Okay, fair enough.
Something which I really want to do.
Fair enough. ठीक है. तो सर अब ये बताएं कि पाकिस्तान के साथ you'll be willing to collaborate? I mean, when things get better.
देखो, एक बात याद रखना जरूरी है इसके अंदर कि मेरी ज़ाती ख्वाहिश and what is it that I can do are sometimes two different things, like with each one of us. There is a particular situation that
Yes.
I also am facing, and as a result of which, if the relationship between the two countries are what they are at this particular stage, it may be, obviously difficult.
Of course.
To do that. Okay. But if you're talking to me about that right now conceptually, later on, of course, if things sort of improve between the two countries, which of course I hope that they will at some stage, and there is cross-border collaborations, etc., I would be in the forefront of that because I have just had one visit to Pakistan and I still have such warm and fond and affectionate memories of each one of you, as well as the situation, the atmosphere as a whole. I have seldom felt so welcome, so well received. I have seldom experienced such generosity. So it's there. ये तहजीब जो है यहाँ भी है, वहाँ भी है. तो कोई मुझे ऐसा वो नहीं लगा. मुझे लगा कि यार अपने एक दूसरे करने. Right. Unfortunately, things sort of became very tense, so I could not come back. Much as I had promised that I would come and do a couple of workshops and stuff like that, and I would be happy to do. But right now, as you understand,
obviously, Anjum sir, this has been such a pleasure and honor, and I'm so happy that you gave me this little opportunity to talk to you. मैं भी आपके साथ काम कर सकता हूँ. मैं पता है बहुत थोड़ा सा इनएक्सपीरियंस हूँ, लेकिन कभी कभी मौका मिलेगा, चांस देंगे छोटे से फिल्म मेकर को भी आपके साथ काम करने के लिए. अच्छा. और
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल absolutely मौका मिलेगा, जरूर करेंगे.
Please sir, keep in touch. It's been a pleasure and honor to talk to you. Please stay safe. I will be in touch with you on any advices and guidances. I look up to you a lot. आपकी एक फिल्म देखी है मैंने, so it's an inspiration. And thank you once again for this wonderful session. And I hope we get out of this COVID times, and regards to the family as well and everyone around you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Khuda Hafiz. Thank you.